There's no definition in the dictionary that is at all satisfactory. But nevertheless, we've all heard that every time he touches his violin, it's very beautiful. I would like you to give some help to both to the teachers amongst us here, but also to the students, because what I've noticed is that intrinsically people either make an incredibly beautiful sound, or they might play incredibly well, and this has nothing to do with Genoa, I hasten to add, but it's just something that I wanted to bring up at some stage this afternoon. But there are some people that play actually very well, they do everything that teachers say, but it actually doesn't sound that nice. So what is it that's okay?
That's a really interesting thing that you say. Is it's so true, and nobody ever says that. So I really appreciate your priorities for even bringing it up, because it's something I've thought about, and something that I've slowly come to the realization of, that when I listen to people play, and this is not just listening to students play or listening to friends play, it's listening to the great masters of whether it be the violin or any other instrument. The people that I listen to on any instrument almost exclusively are the people whose sounds I find interesting or beautiful, or both, preferably both. And there are people, I'm not going to get into who, but legendary figures from the world of the violin that people say, "Oh, isn't so and so wonderful? Don't you just love their recording of this and that? I mean, they're so musical, and the depth they find in this music." And I just kind of nod and smile and think to myself, I never ever listen to this person play because I don't find their sound interesting. So I think for some people, obviously people have different tastes. Like you were saying, there's no definition of what beauty is, and some people will find a certain sound beautiful that others won't. But I think it also is a real issue of priorities, and I think that there are people. I think it's fair to say that there are people out there that make careers performing where a real focus of what they do is a beautiful sound, and there are other people, whether it's violinists or certainly singers, where it's frankly not the most important thing in what they're doing. To me, that's a great loss. The people that you can tell that in terms of beauty of sound or the variety of shading, a variety of colors, that's not where their primary focus is. It's maybe getting a little bit off topic, the issue of actually producing a beautiful sound, because one would hope that should at least be some kind of a priority. I think it's as much an issue of just paying attention as anything else. It's very difficult to remain objective about one's own playing, I find. And you see it a lot in student situations. I'm sure that you've all come across this, you students here playing for one another, where there might be a case of one of your fellow classmates always coming up with very interesting and well-conceived comments and criticisms of other people's playing, yet never applying that to themselves. We see that all the time, right? Someone who can say, yeah, well, this part's, maybe you could be a little bit more like this, or it could be a little bit more in tune, or it's a little scratchy here, it's a little bit out of rhythm. Then they play themselves, and it's like, well, you're not taking any of your own advice. And I think that quite often is because it is so hard to be objective about one's own playing. We get so caught up in the doing that we don't always really hear what's coming out. And I think we're lucky that, as opposed to people of the 19th century and 18th century and going farther back, we can hear what we sound like. You know, we can press a button and record something and hear what it is that other people are hearing. And I think that that is a very valuable lesson, to listen to oneself. And you know, I'm lucky, I get to hear myself for better and for worse. I get to hear myself play a lot, whether it's radio broadcasts or recording takes or things like that. And even with, I play every day, it's my job, you know, and I listen to myself all the time, I'm still surprised by things, and I think that's not what I thought I sounded like. And when you start to understand the difference between what something sounds like here and what something sounds like there, then you can teach yourself, I think, somewhat to compensate for that and to gain an understanding of what I'm doing physically is producing this sound, and this is the sound that I want to produce. Because, you know, you can certainly make arguments about what is the point of playing music, you know, but at this point, for me and for any of you studying here, the point is to be able to bring a message across. Now, there are people that what they do with music is they play for themselves. It's not a career, it's not a profession. They don't play for other people, they play for themselves. If you're gonna play for yourself, that's fine, play whatever way you want. But if you're playing for other people, you have a responsibility, I think, for those people to hear the way you want it to sound. They're trusting you, they're counting on you to put that beauty across. So I find that there are things that I do at the instrument that, yeah, if I were by myself, just playing for myself, I wouldn't play that way. First of all, I wouldn't play like, you know, when you're playing certain violin concertos, I think the sad fact is you're just playing loud all the time. If I were playing for myself in my living room, I would never play that loud, you know. But, so, this is all sort of getting around the subject, but I think that really the main point is listening, you know, listening to yourself, both at the instrument and at whatever opportunity you can to a recording of oneself, and say, well, is that the sound I would want to hear? Is that what I think it sounds like under my ear, and is that the most beautiful sound I can make? And if you ever say, is that the most beautiful sound I can make, and you ever say yes, then you either need to raise your standards or stop lying to yourself, because you can always further refine it. You can always be more beautiful. You can always strive for more. And so, yeah, that would be my advice.
When you were at the same sort of age as many of the people playing now, or even when you were younger, there's a little violinist sat in front here, Tom Wynn, who's 6 years old, and when you were very young, was it a significant part of your development to listen to other people play? Great artists, for instance, perhaps, or...
Yes, absolutely. I think I was in a fortunate situation to be surrounded by a lot of musicians in my home life. My father was a trumpet professor, and at the university in the town where I grew up, so his friends were the music faculty, and his closest friend was my violin teacher, who was the professor at the school of music there, and he had a wonderful record collection of all the sort of greats of the 20th century, and spent a lot of time listening to people. And you know, there's a certain amount of imitation that I think is kind of important. You know, you hear a sound, you think, well, and it can be anyone. It can be someone super famous like Heifetz, or it could be the person in the practice room next to you, and you just hear something, you said, I like that. How do I do that? How can I make that sound? Now, it's not going to be your sound, and of course, ultimately, you need to have your sound. You need to have the sound that speaks from your heart. But the better you can get at identifying sounds that you like and imitating sounds that you like, the broader you will create your own tonal palette from which to draw from when you're creating your own musical identity. So I would encourage any of you, you know, when you hear something that you like, you know, go into a room and say, well, I want to make that sound. What is it? What is it that's making that? is it a denser chord of the sound, or is it more kind of a more air in the sound, maybe more bow? Is it kind of a swirl that's happening from a combination of bow speed and pressure? Or is it an intensity to the vibrato? Is it the vibrato fast? Is it slow? Is it wide? Is it narrow? And experiment, and have fun with it. And another thing I would really encourage people to do is, when listening to your own playing, say, well, if I were somebody else listening, eyes closed, could I always tell when you're on a first finger, or second finger, third finger, fourth finger? The idea is you should, one would hope, be able to make any sound on any finger in any place on the violin. And that's something worth practicing. So often we end up sadly, making musical decisions because of technical limitations. You've got some awkward thing, you're up on a fourth finger in some weird position, and you're double stop, and it's like, well, the only way I can really play it is with this kind of sound, so therefore that's the kind of sound I'm going to use. And well, that's another case of you've lowered your standards too much at that point. If you're playing something and you realize that the way you're making it sound is not out of choice but out of necessity, then that's a place you need to practice. You should be able to, in theory, at any place in any piece, make any sound you want, and that, of course, becomes very, very challenging.